Captain Ethan Wright adjusted his uniform one last time before the airlock doors opened. This moment would make history, the first official meeting between humanity and the Galactic Concord, an alliance of the 12 most advanced species in the known universe. Behind him stood his small delegation, Lieutenant Carol Peterson, their engineering specialist with short blonde hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Dr. Sam Martinez, a calm medical officer who had insisted on bringing his own emergency kit, despite assurances that the alien vessel had superior medical facilities, and 3 other officers representing Earth's best. "Remember," Ethan said quietly to his team, "we're the new kids at school today. Let's be respectful, observant, and show them what humans are made of." The massive doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a chamber that seemed designed to impress. The ceiling arched 20 meters overhead, covered in a material that shimmered like the night sky. The delegation from Earth walked forward, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Ambassador Krilzax waited for them at the center of the room. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall with iridescent blue-green skin that seemed to ripple with each movement. 4 arms extended from a torso protected by what appeared to be ceremonial armor, though Ethan suspected it contained advanced technology beyond Earth's capabilities. "Captain Wright of Earth." The translator in Ethan's ear converted the series of clicks and whirs into English. "The Galactic Concord welcomes humanity to the stars." Ethan bowed slightly, a gesture his team had practiced. "Ambassador Krilzax, Earth is honored to join this gathering of worlds. We come in peace and friendship." The aliens' eyes, all 4 of them, blinked in what the humans had learned was a sign of approval. "You have achieved much in a short time. Your species has only discovered faster-than-light travel within the last 50 Earth years. Most species require centuries more development before we initiate contact." "We're quick learners," Carol said, with a small smile, then looked down when Ethan shot her a warning glance. They had agreed he would do the talking at first. Krilzax made a sound that the translators struggled with but seemed to be amusement. "Indeed, that is partly why we have made an exception. Your adaptability interests us greatly." The ambassador gestured with one of his lower arms, and the far wall seemed to dissolve, revealing a massive dining area. Around a crescent-shaped table sat representatives of the other 11 species. Their appearances ranged from nearly human to utterly alien. One appeared to be a floating collection of crystals, while another resembled an earth octopus enclosed in what looked like a walking water tank. "Please join us for the welcome feast. Food compatible with human biology has been prepared." The human delegation followed, doing their best not to stare at the assembly of aliens. Dr. Martinez whispered under his breath, "I could spend lifetimes studying just one of these species." The meal proceeded smoothly. Ethan found the food surprisingly tasty, not quite Earth flavors, but clearly designed to appeal to human taste buds. The various ambassadors asked polite questions about Earth, human culture, and especially human physiology. They seemed particularly interested in how humans had survived on a planet with such extreme temperature variations. "Most advanced species evolve on worlds with more stable environments," explained a small, rodent-like alien that introduced itself as the science director Peltic. "Your ability to function in temperatures ranging from what you call freezing to sweltering is uncommon." Carol smiled. "That's nothing. Humans have settlements in the Antarctic and research stations in deserts. With proper equipment, we can survive almost anywhere." The aliens exchanged glances that Ethan couldn't quite interpret. An hour into the dinner, Ethan was beginning to feel comfortable. The initial nervousness had faded as the conversation flowed easily. The translator technology was remarkable, allowing for nuanced discussion despite the widely different vocal organs of each species. Then the ship shuddered. At first it was just a slight vibration. The aliens paused in their conversations, head tentacles, or ears or sensory organs turning toward the walls. Then came a much stronger tremor that rattled the dishes on the table. A voice spoke in multiple languages simultaneously from hidden speakers. "Warning. Power coupling failure in Section 42B. Containment protocols activated. All personnel evacuate adjacent sections." The calm atmosphere evaporated instantly. Several of the aliens stood up, their body language clearly alarmed even across species barriers. Ambassador Krillzax raised all four arms. Please remain calm. The Celestial Harmony has advanced safety systems. This is likely a minor issue. A new voice broke in. One of the aliens wearing what appeared to be a uniform rather than ceremonial clothes. Ambassador, sensors indicate extreme temperature increase in Section 42B and surrounding areas. Current reading is 700 degrees Celsius and rising. The room erupted in concerned vocalizations. Ethan caught Carol's eye, and she mouthed the words, "Engine room?" He nodded subtly. Another alien rushed into the room. This one moved with a strange swimming motion despite being on dry land. Its skin glistened with what appeared to be a thin layer of water, and gill-like structures fluttered on its neck. It spoke rapidly in a language the humans' translators struggled with, but Ethan caught phrases like, "my child," and "trapped." Krillzax turned to the humans, his four eyes blinking rapidly. There is a situation. Science Officer Multhra's offspring was in a learning pod adjacent to the affected area. The automatic systems have sealed all compartments to contain the damage, but the child is now trapped. Can't you override the systems? Sam asked, medical instincts kicking in. The override would release the fire into other sections. And the alien hesitated. The temperature has now reached 900 degrees Celsius. No rescue drone can function in such heat, and no species in the Concord can survive such temperatures even with protection. The aquatic alien, Multhra, made a keening sound that needed no translation. It was the sound of a parent losing hope. Ethan stepped forward. What's the atmosphere composition in the affected section? Has the structural integrity been compromised? The aliens looked at him with an expression he couldn't read, but suspected was confusion. The atmosphere is similar to this room. Oxygen-nitrogen mix with trace elements, answered the uniformed alien. Structural integrity is at 92% and holding. But Captain Wright, the temperature alone makes rescue impossible. We are preparing to evacuate this entire section of the ship. Ethan exchanged looks with his team. Carol was already moving toward one of the ship's information terminals, asking rapid questions about the ship's emergency equipment. Sam had opened his medical kit, inventorying contents with quick, practiced movements. The temperature won't be a problem, Ethan said quietly. Humans have been entering burning buildings to save lives for thousands of years. The entire alien delegation stared at him in complete silence. That's impossible, Krillzax finally said. No sentient species could survive such conditions. Ethan smiled grimly. Watch us. The room fell silent after Ethan's words. The alien delegation stared at the humans with expressions ranging from disbelief to what might have been hope. Carol was already moving, her focus sharp and clear. I need to speak with your quartermaster. We'll need emergency equipment. A tall, spindly alien with rust-colored skin stepped forward. I am Chief Supply Officer Grell, but I must inform you, our protective gear cannot withstand temperatures above 300 degrees. The affected area is now reading 950 degrees and climbing. Show me what you have anyway, Carol said, following the alien out of the room. We can modify it. Multhra, the aquatic alien parent, approached Ethan with a strange swimming motion. Up close, Ethan could see the alien's skin was covered in tiny scales that shimmered under the light. You truly believe you can save my child? The little one is only 6 cycles old, still requiring moisture every 30 minutes. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. Captain, if the child needs constant moisture, we'll need to account for that. What hell should I know about Vexillian physiology? The alien's eyes widened, large and dark like polished obsidian. You would risk your life for a child not of your species? A child you have never met? Ethan nodded. On Earth, we have people who do this every day. We call them firefighters. They run into burning buildings while everyone else runs out. Martinez was already preparing supplies from his medical kit. We'll need something to keep the child moist. And I'll need to prepare for smoke inhalation treatment for both the child and whoever goes in. The ship trembled again, more violently this time. The overhead speakers announced in multiple languages. Warning, fire has breached secondary containment. Temperature in Section 42B now at 1100 degrees Celsius. Emergency protocols initiated. Section 42B will be jettisoned in 15 minutes. Molthra made that terrible keening sound again. Jettisoned? No, my child. Ambassador Krilzax approached, his normally smooth movements now jerky with stress. I am sorry, Science Officer, this is protocol. We cannot risk the entire ship. The needs of the many must outweigh the needs of the one. No. Ethan's voice was firm. We're not giving up. 15 minutes is plenty of time. Carol returned, arms full of equipment, followed by the supply officer who carried even more. She had a determined look that Ethan recognized from their academy days. We can make this work. The ship has fire suppression foam that can be applied to clothing for short-term heat resistance. Their emergency blankets can be modified as an outer layer, and we can use coolant from one of their systems to create a temporary cooling unit. The alien officers watched in amazement as the humans quickly worked to modify the equipment. Carol's hands moved with practiced efficiency, connecting tubes and reworking systems in ways the aliens had never considered. This isn't proper procedure, complained a tall, angular alien with metallic skin. These modifications haven't been tested or approved. Sometimes you have to improvise, Carol replied without looking up from her work. Ethan, this will only give you about 5 minutes of protection, maybe less. Should be enough, Ethan said. What's the quickest route to the child's location? A holographic map appeared above the table as one of the ship's officers accessed the systems. This is the learning pod where the young one was last detected. Life signs are still present but weakening. Ethan studied the route quickly. 3 main corridors, 2 sealed doors to get through, then the pod itself. I can do that in under 3 minutes. You keep saying I, Ambassador Krilzax noted. Surely you mean a team will attempt this. Ethan shook his head. Too risky for multiple people. I'll go alone, Captain, Martinez said quietly. With all due respect, you're not trained for this. I have emergency medical experience. Maybe I should. You're needed here. Ethan cut him off. Be ready to treat both of us when I return. The aliens watched, in silence, as Carol helped Ethan into the modified protection gear. It wasn't pretty. Layers of emergency blankets covered in hardening foam, with coolant tubes running between layers. On his back was a small pack containing air and additional coolant. His face was largely covered, with only his eyes visible behind a clear visor that Carol had reinforced. The child, Ethan said to Molthra. What do I need to know? How do I handle them? The alien seemed moved by the question. Gently. Our young cannot regulate body temperature well. Jiri has blue-tinted scales and will be in a learning chair shaped like a half-shell. The moisture in the pod should be mostly evaporated by now. When you find Jiri, try to keep the gills on their neck moist if possible. Ethan nodded, memorizing the details. I'll bring your child back. Carol finished sealing the makeshift suit. The coolant will only last about 5 minutes. After that, the heat will start to penetrate. Then I'll be quick, Ethan said. Martinez handed him a small medical kit. If the child is unconscious, use this. It's a respiratory stimulant, safe for their species. The ship's officer led Ethan to the nearest access point to the affected section. The metal door was hot to the touch even in the corridor. Through a small reinforced window, Ethan could see the hallway beyond glowing a dull red. This is madness, the ship's officer said. No species can survive those conditions. Humans are too stubborn to know what's impossible, Ethan replied. He took a deep breath as the cooling system activated, sending a chill through his modified suit. Open the door. The officer hesitated, then pressed a sequence into the control panel. Emergency override. Be warned. The atmosphere beyond may be toxic. Understood. Ethan pulled down his breathing apparatus. Start the timer. If I'm not back in 8 minutes, seal this section permanently. Before the alien could protest, Ethan stepped through the doorway into hell. The heat hit him, like a physical blow even through the protective layers. The corridor glowed with heat. The metal walls warped in places. Every step felt like pushing against a solid wall of scorching air. Ethan moved as quickly as he could, checking the mental map he'd memorized. First corridor straight ahead, then left at the junction. The suit's cooling system hummed, struggling against the overwhelming heat. Sweat poured down his face inside the mask, stinging his eyes. The first sealed door was ahead, its control panel melted beyond use. Ethan pulled out the emergency override tool Carol had given him and forced it into the manual release slot. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the door slid halfway open, stopping with a screech of protesting metal. Ethan squeezed through the gap and continued. Behind his mask, he gasped for breath. The air was growing thinner as the fire consumed the oxygen. He checked his timer. 2 minutes gone. "Hang on, kid," he muttered. "I'm coming." Back in the command center, the aliens and remaining humans watched the rescue attempt through the ship's monitoring system. The cameras showed only fuzzy images through the smoke and heat, but they could make out Ethan's figure moving through the glowing corridors. "The human has made it past the first sealed door," announced the ship's officer. "Remarkable." Carol stood close to the screen, her face tight with worry. "The suit wasn't designed for this. The coolant will be evaporating faster than we calculated. Dr. Martinez prepared his medical equipment. He arranged various devices and medicines on a table, working quickly and methodically. "Carol, what's the internal temperature of his suit reading?" She checked a small device in her hand. "Rising. Currently 45 degrees Celsius inside the suit. That's uncomfortable but survivable for a human." The aliens looked at her with new interest. Ambassador Krillzax moved closer. "Your species can function at such temperatures?" "For short periods," Martinez explained while continuing his preparations. "Humans can survive internal body temperatures up to about 42 degrees for brief periods. We start to experience heat stroke and organ damage beyond that. But we can withstand much higher external temperatures." Molthra hadn't moved from the monitor, watching Ethan's progress with desperate hope. "No species in the Concord could do what your captain is doing. Our bodies simply cannot function at those temperatures." Carol managed a small smile. "Humans evolved on a world with wildly different climate zones. We've had to adapt." On the screen, Ethan reached another junction. The cameras showed him pausing, checking his orientation, then turning right. "The learning pod is straight ahead," Molthra said, gills fluttering rapidly. "Just beyond the next sealed door." Inside the burning section, Ethan felt like he was walking through an oven. Each breath burned his lungs despite the breathing apparatus. The coolant in his suit was struggling, and he could feel sweat pouring down his entire body. His vision blurred slightly from the heat and dehydration. 3 minutes had passed since he entered. He needed to move faster. The second sealed door appeared ahead. Unlike the first, this one showed no signs of damage. Ethan tried the control panel, and to his surprise it responded. The door slid open, revealing a small anteroom. Beyond that was another door, the entrance to the learning pod. As Ethan crossed the anteroom, part of the ceiling collapsed behind him. A twisted piece of metal struck his leg, and he stumbled. Pain shot through his calf, but he pushed forward. The coolant pack on his back was growing lighter as the liquid evaporated. 4 minutes gone. The learning pod door didn't respond to the controls. Ethan used Carol's override tool again, forcing the manual release. The door opened just a few inches before stopping. Ethan wedged his body into the gap and pushed with all his strength. The door slowly moved another foot, enough for him to squeeze through. Inside, the pod was filled with smoke. The curved walls glowed red with heat. Ethan scanned the room, looking for the shell-shaped learning chair Molthra had described there in the corner. A small blue-scaled creature lay motionless in a chair designed like a half-shell. The child, Jiri, wasn't moving. Ethan rushed over, feeling the protection of his suit beginning to fail. The coolant was almost gone, and heat was seeping through the layers. He checked the child quickly. The blue scales were dry and dull, but he could see slight movement in the gill-like structures on the neck. "Hang on, little one," Ethan murmured. He removed the small medical kit Martinez had given him and applied the respiratory stimulant as instructed. Then he took off the outer layer of his suit. It would offer some protection for the child. In the command center, the aliens gasped as they watched Ethan remove part of his protective gear. "What is he doing?" Krilzax demanded. "He'll die without that protection." Carol stared at the screen. "He's using it to protect the child." Martinez nodded. "The kid won't survive even a minute of exposure. Ethan's giving up his own safety." Mothra made a sound that might have been a prayer or a sob. On the small monitor showing Ethan's vital signs, the temperature reading jumped alarmingly. His heart rate increased, and oxygen levels dropped. "We're losing telemetry," Carol said, voice tight. "The systems are failing in the heat." The ship rumbled again, more violently this time. The automatic voice announced, "Warning, structural integrity in Section 42B at 70%. Jettison sequence initiating in 5 minutes." "Can we override it?" Martinez asked. The ship's officer shook his head. "Not without the captain's authorization. Codes. And we have no communication with him now." Carol slammed her hand against the console. "Keep trying." In the learning pod, Ethan wrapped the child in the protective layer, making sure to cover the vital gill areas. The young alien was light, maybe 20 pounds, but Ethan's strength was fading fast. The heat was overwhelming now that he'd given up his outer protection. His skin felt like it was cooking. Each breath was agony. The timer on his wrist showed nearly 6 minutes had passed since he entered the burning section. He needed to move. Ethan lifted the bundled child and turned back toward the door. The way he'd come in was now blocked by fallen debris. He would need to find another route. The pod had a second door on the far wall. Ethan stumbled toward it, fighting against the pain and the growing weakness in his legs. The injury from the fallen metal was worse than he'd thought, and blood soaked his pant leg. He reached the second door and forced it open. Beyond was a service corridor, narrower than the main ones, but still navigable. According to the ship layout he'd memorized, this should lead back to the main corridor, bypassing the blockage. Ethan's vision was narrowing, dark spots appearing at the edges. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other. 7 minutes now. The suit's cooling was completely gone. His body temperature was rising dangerously, but he refused to stop moving. In the bundle of protective material, the alien child stirred slightly. Good. The stimulant was working. Ethan adjusted his grip to keep the gills covered, remembering Mothra's instructions. The service corridor seemed endless, winding through the burning section of the ship. Ethan's steps became unsteady. His lungs burned with each breath. Just a little further, he told himself. Just a little more. In the command center, the tension was unbearable. The cameras had lost track of Ethan and the child. The monitors showed only static or empty corridors filled with smoke and flame. "Jettison in 3 minutes," announced the ship's computer. Mothra turned to Carol, eyes wide with desperation. "Can you stop it? Please." Carol worked frantically at the controls alongside the ship's officers. "The system is locked. We need the captain's codes." "The temperature in Section 42B has reached 1200 degrees, reported one of the aliens. "No living thing could survive that heat." Martinez continued preparing his medical area, refusing to give up hope. "You don't know humans very well," he said. Quietly, Ambassador Krilzax had been watching the humans with growing amazement. "Perhaps we don't," he admitted. The evacuation of nearby sections was almost complete. Soon only the command center crew would remain, monitoring the increasingly desperate situation. 2 minutes to jettison," said the computer. Carol stopped her work at the controls and stood straight, facing the ambassador. "We are not leaving without our captain and that child." For the first time, real doubt showed in Krilzax's 4 eyes. "The protocols can be damned," Carol finished firmly. The command center fell silent at Carol's words. Ambassador Krilzax stared at her, all 4 of his eyes blinking rapidly. Finally, he turned to the ship's officer. "Is there any way to delay the jettison sequence? Even a few minutes?" The officer shook his head. It is an automated safety protocol. Once initiated, it can only be stopped by the captain's authorization or what? Martinez demanded, looking up from his medical preparations, or by direct override from the engine control room. But that section is also compromised by the fire. Carol's eyes lit up. Where exactly is the override located? The officer brought up a schematic on the main screen. Here. But it's impossible to reach. The corridor leading to it is completely engulfed in flames. Show me the path from the learning pod to this control room, Carol insisted. The map shifted, displaying a route through the burning section. Martinez leaned in, studying it carefully. There's a chance, he said quietly. If Ethan found the child and took this service corridor, he might be able to reach the override on his way back. Malthra moved closer to the screen, gill structures fluttering rapidly. But would your captain know to do this? Does he understand our ship's systems? Carol managed a small smile despite her worry. Ethan studied your ship's schematics before we even came aboard. Standard procedure for him. If there's a path, he'll find it. The computer's voice cut through their conversation. 1 minute to jettison sequence. Inside the burning section, Ethan stumbled through the service corridor, struggling to stay conscious. The bundle containing the alien child felt heavier with each step. His skin blistered from the heat and his lungs seized with every breath. 8 minutes had passed since he entered this inferno. The service corridor ended at a junction. To the left would take him toward the exit point where he had entered. To the right was a small control room. Engine systems, if he remembered the schematics correctly. Ethan hesitated, his mind working through the fog of pain and heat exhaustion. If the ship was preparing to jettison this section, there might be an override in that control room. He turned right. The small room was in better condition than the corridors, its systems still partially functioning. Ethan laid the bundle containing the child carefully on the floor, then turned to the control panels. His vision swam, but he forced himself to focus. There, an emergency control system with a flashing red indicator. Jettison sequence active. Ethan pulled himself to the console and studied the display. His training included emergency protocols for various ships, and while the language was alien, the basic concepts were similar. He found what looked like an override command and pressed his palm against the activation pad. The screen flashed, then displayed a message in multiple languages. One of them was English. Authorization required. Ethan fumbled with the communicator on his wrist, hoping it still worked despite the damage from the heat. Command center, he croaked, his voice barely audible. This is right. I need authorization. To override the jettison sequence. In the command center, Carol's communicator crackled with static, then Ethan's faint voice came through. Everyone froze. Ethan, Carol shouted. We can barely hear you. Where are you? Engine control. Override. Authorization. The ship's officer rushed to a console. He's found the override station. I can grant authorization remotely. The officer's fingers flew over the controls. On the main screen, a countdown showed 30 seconds remaining before jettison. Authorization granted, the officer announced. He needs to enter the code 73921 in their numerical equivalent. Carol relayed the information through her communicator. Ethan, can you hear me? Enter 73921. No response came. The countdown continued. 20 seconds, again, Carol shouted into her communicator. 73921. In the engine control room, Ethan could barely make out Carol's voice through the static. He caught only fragments. 7, 3, 9. He squinted at the control panel. The alien symbols swam before his eyes. He recognized what might be their number system from his briefing materials. With a shaking hand, he pressed what he hoped were the correct symbols. The screen flashed. A new message appeared. Invalid code. 15 seconds to jettison. Ethan took a deep breath, ignoring the searing pain in his lungs. He studied the symbols again, matching them to what he remembered from the briefing. This time he pressed the symbols more carefully. The screen changed, displaying a green indicator. Jettison sequence suspended. Ethan's legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor beside the bundled child. He carefully unwrapped part of the protective material to check on the young alien. The blue scales were dry, but the child was breathing, gill structures moving weakly. "Hang on, little one," Ethan whispered. "We're going home." In the command center, the ship's officer shouted in surprise. "He did it! Jettison sequence suspended!" Cheers erupted from both humans and aliens. Mothra made a keening sound that seemed to express joy rather than distress. "Where are they?" Martinez demanded. "Can we get a location?" The officer worked the controls. "The signal is coming from auxiliary engine control. It's still within the fire zone, but closer to the outer boundary." "We need to get them out now," Carol said. "Ethan's protection is completely gone by this point. He won't last much longer in that heat." Ambassador Krillzax stepped forward. "Our rescue drones cannot withstand those temperatures. Then we'll need to open a path," Carol said firmly. "Can your fire suppression systems create a temporary corridor from that control room to the nearest safe area?" The ship's officer considered this. "Possibly. We could redirect all available suppressant to create a path. It would last only moments before the heat overwhelmed it." "Do it," ordered the ambassador, surprising everyone. The officer programmed the fire suppression systems. On the schematic, a route illuminated from the engine control room to a safety bulkhead about 30 meters away. "Suppressant release in 3, 2, 1. In the control room, Ethan heard a loud hissing sound from the corridor outside. He pulled himself up to look through the doorway and saw the impossible, a tunnel of relatively clear air amid the inferno created by jets of fire suppressant spraying from the ceiling. He understood immediately. One last chance. One final push. Ethan gathered the bundled child in his arms and stumbled into the corridor. The suppressant provided only minimal relief from the heat, but the path was clear of flames. He followed the jets, one painful step after another. His vision narrowed to a tunnel. His lungs refused to draw full breaths. The pain had become a distant thing, separated from him by a growing fog. 9 minutes, longer than anyone had thought possible in this heat. The safety bulkhead appeared ahead, a heavy door marking the boundary between the fire zone and the rest of the ship. Ethan focused all his remaining strength on reaching it. Behind him, the fire suppressant began to fail. The inferno rushed back in, consuming the temporary corridor. Heat scorched Ethan's back as he stumbled the final few steps. The bulkhead door slid open. Figures waited on the other side, aliens in protective gear, ready to pull them through. With his last conscious effort, Ethan thrust the bundled child forward into waiting arms. Then darkness claimed him as he collapsed to the floor. "We have them!" shouted one of the rescue team through the communication system. "Both the child and the human. Medical assistance needed immediately." In the command center, Mothra made a sound that needed no translation, pure relief and joy. Martinez was already running toward the medical bay, Carol right behind him. Ambassador Krillzax turned to the remaining human officers. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, and when he spoke, the translator conveyed genuine emotion in his voice. "All my cycles traveling the stars," he said. "I have never witnessed anything like this. Your captain just changed how the Galactic Concord will view humanity forever." The sun was setting when Emma finally reached the small cottage at the edge of the forest. Her legs were tired from walking all day, and her backpack felt heavy on her shoulders. She looked around carefully, making sure no one had followed her. The cottage looked old and a bit worn. Paint was peeling from the wooden walls and ivy grew up the sides. Emma remembered her grandmother telling her about this place years ago, but she had never believed the stories until now. Those stories seemed like fairy tales back then, stories about hidden treasures and secret family history. She walked up to the front door and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly as she reached for the old brass doorknob. It was rusty and cold to the touch. With a gentle push, the door creaked open. Dust floated in the air, dancing in the last rays of sunlight that came through the dirty windows. Inside, the cottage was simple. A wooden table stood in the middle of the main room, covered with a layer of dust. Some old chairs were pushed against the walls. Emma noticed cobwebs in the corners and a layer of dust on everything. It was clear no one had lived here for a very long time. She placed her backpack on the table and started to look around. The walls were covered with faded photographs and old maps. Some were so old that the edges were turning yellow. Emma moved closer to examine them. Her fingers traced the edges of a black and white photo showing a group of people standing in front of this very cottage. A small wooden box caught her eye. It was sitting on a shelf near the window, almost hidden behind an old curtain. Emma carefully picked it up. It was lighter than she expected, and when she opened it, she found a stack of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. The first letter was dated many years ago. Emma could see it was written in her grandmother's handwriting. Her heart started to beat faster. What secrets could these letters hold? Why had her grandmother never told her about this cottage? As the last light of day disappeared, Emma lit a small lamp she had brought with her. The warm light made the cottage feel less scary. She sat down at the table and carefully untied the ribbon holding the letters together. The first letter began with a surprising sentence. "If you are reading this, everything is about to change." Emma's hands trembled as she continued reading. The letter spoke of a family secret that had been hidden for generations. It talked about a special object that was supposed to be protected, something that could change everything. Outside, the wind started to blow. Tree branches scratched against the cottage windows, making soft, strange sounds. Emma tried to concentrate on the letter, but the noises made her feel nervous. She looked up, suddenly feeling like someone might be watching her. The cottage had many shadows. Old furniture created strange shapes in the dim lamplight. Emma knew she needed to be careful. Whatever secret her grandmother had hidden here was important, and she was sure now that people would want to find it. She continued reading, her eyes moving quickly across the pages. Each letter revealed a little more of the story. It was about a family tradition, about protecting something that was very important. But what exactly was she supposed to protect? The letters were not completely clear. As the night grew darker, Emma realized she would need to stay in the cottage. She had no other choice. She prepared a small area near the fireplace, spreading out her sleeping bag. The old fireplace looked like it had not been used in many years, but it would provide some comfort. Before sleeping, she placed the box of letters close to her. She knew they were important, and she wanted to keep them safe. Her mind was full of questions. What was the secret? Why was it so important? And most of all, why had her grandmother never told her about all this before? The wind continued to blow outside. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Emma closed her eyes, knowing that tomorrow would bring more answers. But for now, she needed to rest and prepare for whatever was coming.